You need an exit strategy from living off the land before you go there, or later in life consequences of living off the land without a backup strategy. I want to warn people about making living location and lifestyle choices that they can't support or reverse as they age. I want to convince people to answer this question for their own situation. Will you have a perpetually available workforce or the monetary resources available to purchase labor to do the things that have to be done when, as you age, you can't do them? So a possible title for this video, Gonna Start Living Off the Land? Consider this first. Or, Wanna Go Living Off the Land? Consider this first. Or, Planning to Go Living Off the Land? Consider this first. It's advice to those living off the land or those considering it. One form of the advice: go out and find some folks who are already doing what you are considering doing. Whether you are simply considering moving to the country or going all the way to total back to the land and fully off the grid or anything in between. Visit those folks. Ask them for a tour of their place and get them to talk about their lifestyle. Tell them what works well and what hasn't worked well. Ask them how much of their day is spent just staying alive, so to speak. Ask them what they would have done differently. A fact: living off the land is a manually labor-intense lifestyle. I don't mean to make this a negative essay. I simply want to make folks aware of the aging-related issues of choosing this highly labor-intensive living style. Who's my audience? Well, I started thinking about people that we see on the television. There's this program called Homestead Rescue. And the people that end up being rescued on that program certainly didn't think very hard about what they were getting into before they did it. For my audience, how about back to the landers or people who move to the country or country folks in general? People who want to live in the country and more or less go back to nature or make a very light environmental footprint. I guess I need to decide what the heck a country person is, don't I? Well, one look at it might be no neighbors within 1,000 feet, have a mailbox down by the road, heat with your own wood. Those are just a couple of things for starters. But grow your own food could be easily added on to that. Living off the grid. The idea here would be to focus on people who don't live in a town and or don't have spitting distance neighbors. This essay has been prepared by a fairly healthy 83-year-old male, me, who is starting to see that he can't do everything that he used to be physically able to do, at least for not as long at a time as he used to be able to do so. But yet the amount of work hasn't changed. Do I want to convince you not to go off the grid or not to try to live off the land? No, but I do want you to understand that you must take into account the undeniable fact that as we age, we become less capable, and therefore, to continue living comfortably, we must plan to account for the decline of manual labor capacity and energy that will come our way sooner or later. What are you going to do when it's your turn? My advice again, don't lock yourself into a dead-end situation by doing your thing without a plan for comfort in your retirement years. Life is all about choices and options. Sooner or later, you won't be able to provide all the labor needed to maintain yourselves and whoever else is there with you. How many 80-year-olds can do the same amount of work that a 50-year-old can do? That is the question. Now look at the total amount of work that has to be done, both on a regular basis and in dealing with emergency and seasonally heavy chores at your place. How is all that going to be done when you can't do it all? Recovery from health events and things like falling and other injuries often have more serious bodily effects and can take longer to heal. Are you prepared to deal with those things? Your need for access to health care generally increases with age too. Have you taken that into account? You need an exit strategy from that environment in old age. A guy I knew from the 1980s who was a total back-to-the-lander often told me how great old age was going to be. Well, they did almost everything by hand except for horses to till their small holding of about 20 acres or so, hilly land at that. But in old age, he said he'd simply sit on the porch in his rocking chair and let the world go by. I guess his assumption was that his two boys, and maybe his wife, would take over all the work. But those boys got out of there as soon as they could. Now what? See what I mean? When you are young, and by that I mean even 60 years old, you need a lot of energy and the physical capability to use it. As far as I can tell, none of the living off the land work goes away just because you got older. Again, advice, don't quit your day job if you have one. Here I'm kind of repeating myself, but my wife watches a TV show called Homestead Rescue a lot. We constantly hear the rescuees telling the camera how all they wanted to do was to live out the rest of their lives there in the boonies where the rescue is currently taking place. They almost always had no idea what they were getting into before they did it. Often something didn't go well for them in town, so they decided they'd get away from it all and take control of their own lives rather than fix the original problem. So be it. But time marches on, as they say. Since the population of our country becomes increasingly non-rural, fewer and fewer assets are apportioned to folks out in the country, by the way, especially for those who look for the cheapest land available when they decide to go off-grid or back to the land. Like it or not, the needs for technology increase with every decade, as does your age. You will need to be able to access some of that technology sooner or later, so don't totally hide from it. Recently, I talked to a very good friend who has been out there semi-living off the land for many years now. And when he went out there, the whole area was full of, I guess, what we would have called back in the 70s hippies, pretty much. I asked him, out of all those people that had moved out there like he did, how many are left? And he said, there are no secluded people left. Most, if not all, have outside jobs. Many gave up and sold their land or farm and moved to a, as in his terms, little house in town.